Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Happy to have you here. Today we're going to be doing a February and March reading wrap-up. This is my first reading wrap-up, so bear with me. Hopefully I don't overspeak or underspeak about the books, but the goal is to just have fun with it. So my drink is already poured. I've got my Olipop cream soda as usual. Feel free to get yourself a drink or a snack, and let's talk about my February and March reading wrap-up. I read 13 books in February and March, which is actually pretty good for a realistic reader. Now, I will say 8 of those were audiobooks, and 5 of those were physical books or read on my Kindle. I've talked about this before, but audiobooks are the best way for me to ensure that I'm reading a wider variety of books and in a more realistic time frame. Because if I only read 5 books between February and March, I probably would be pretty upset. Anywho, without further ado, let's get into some of the books. Hold up. Something very important I need to tell you, and that is my rating scale. I am on Goodreads. My profile link is in my YouTube bio, so feel free to friend me on Goodreads. Since Goodreads doesn't have the ability to rank books 0.5 or 0.25, I typically stick to a full star rating, so 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If I really think it deserves a 0.5, I will write it in my review. There are some books that I don't rate, and those typically are memoirs or biographies, anything that is about someone's personal life experience. I don't tend to rate. Now, there are some exceptions to the rule, and I just recently changed this. So if you see my Goodreads and if there are some memoirs that have ratings, that's just because this is a new thing. But of course, I also don't rate books if I don't finish them or if it just didn't feel right to rate them in the first place. Now, a 1 star. A 1 star is quite rare, I would say. I think I've given maybe 1 or 2 1 stars in my entire reading career. This is typically a book that I really did not like. This is a book that maybe had a bunch of typos that were missed. Those tend to really bother me. Or I really hated the execution, the plot, the characters. I connected to nothing. It was maybe a disturbing read, something that I feel shouldn't really have been published in the first place. Ugh, sorry. But again, very rare. A 2 star rating is this book was fine. It's not special to me, it didn't make me feel anything, but it wasn't poorly executed or poorly written. The plot was fine. It was just overall meh. A 3 star is a good rating. This is where we get to my good ratings. 3 stars is typically, I liked this book. Maybe it had minimal substance. Maybe I didn't love all the characters or their dynamics, or maybe there wasn't a lot of character growth. But overall, it was a decent book. Would I recommend it? May or may not recommend it to other people. I would say a 3 and 4 star rating are my most occurring ratings. 2s are actually pretty frequent as well. As of lately, since I've been trying to read books that I want to read and that I've heard good things about, a 2 is becoming more rare, but previously I would read a lot of 2 stars. On to the 4 star rating. The 4 star rating is an incredible book. It made me feel things. I connected with the characters. The plot was interesting. It kept me engaged, and I liked the writing. There was just something missing. Something where I felt like we needed a little more oomph for that 5 star, but a 4 star is usually an excellent book for me that I would recommend to other people. Finally, a 5 star rating. This goes without saying, this is an immaculate book. It was perfect for me. I felt it deep in my soul. I felt the author's purpose for writing the book. I felt the character's emotions myself. Maybe this book made me cry. That's very rare. Overall, a 5 star is something that I can't stop talking about and I want to share with everyone I know and love. Sometimes 5 stars shock me as well. Maybe I went into the book not expecting it to be good, and then it was incredible, or I had heard not great things about it, and I really ended up loving it, and so that extra star kind of made up for my lowered expectations, if that makes sense. But equally so with some 4 star reviews, if a book is super hyped and it didn't meet those expectations, I typically will give it a 4-star because, again, there's that something missing, something that couldn't quite meet my expectations. Please understand that these are just my personal ratings, and I would always recommend that you go check out a book for yourself and see if it would be something that interests you, because everyone has their own opinions and life experiences that impact how books affect them. Okay, for our books, we're going to be going in order of reading them. So the first book I read in February was Look Closer by David Ellis. This was a book I listened to on audiobook from Hoopla. And if you don't know what Hoopla is, I've mentioned it in my other videos, but it is a library app, much like Libby, that you can borrow audiobooks and digital copies of books from. Look Closer by David Ellis is a psychological thriller crime fiction novel that follows a married couple, Vicky and Simon. Now, in the beginning of the book, we find out that a young woman, Lauren, is found dead in her home on Halloween. So, throughout this novel, we're trying to figure out what happened to Lauren and also figure out the dynamic between Vicky and Simon. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was very twisty and kept me guessing, which is something I really need from a thriller. It was dual perspective and an alternating timeline where we're flashing back. I think I can't remember. Now, this book reminded me a little bit of Gone Girl, which is one of my favorite thrillers of all time. It was unpredictable and just a really great thriller. If you like thrillers and you like mysteries, I would 100% recommend this book. The only reason it wasn't a 5-star for me is because I had heard such incredible things and everyone rated it 5 stars that I was going into it with higher expectations, but it was still an incredible book. All right, let's go to the next one. The next book that I read in February is Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. I am in smack dab the middle of the Throne of Glass series right now, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I have read all of the ACOTAR books and the first book of the Crescent City series, so I'm definitely a Sarah J. Maas fan. I'm not going to dive too deep into this book because if you know, you know. If you don't, it is a series, so I don't want to give away anything if you haven't read the series yet. Heir of Fire, I rated 4 stars. I thought it was an excellent book. I really liked the introduction of the new characters and perspectives, where you're starting to get more of a sense that it's going to be this epic fantasy with all of these intertwined storylines. It was nice to branch out from Selena's usual group of people. It definitely wasn't a 5-star for me. That's not true. I rated Assassin's Blade 5 stars. Sue me. I truly loved it. And I read it after Crown of Midnight. But I really feel like that was necessary for me to really appreciate what Assassin's Blade had to offer. But anyways, back to Heir of Fire. I enjoyed it. It just wasn't my favorite so far in the series. But I've heard great things about Queen of Shadows, so hopefully that one wows me. The next book that I read in February was also an audiobook, The Fox Hunt by Caitlin Breeze. This was my very first ARC, so that in itself is extra special to me. I received this ARC from NetGalley. The Fox Hunt follows Emma Curran, who is a British university student. She receives a research fellowship and is suddenly brought into this new world of the university elite. She meets this boy named Jasper. He invites her to join in on his secret society's event. Emma finds herself in this very unique and odd situation with unfamiliar people. Without giving too much away, her reality shifts a little bit, we will say that. And she finds herself in this new dreamlike world with no idea how to get back to her normal life. This story was 3 stars for me. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very unique and I liked the secret society aspect of it. It was kind of dark academia and gothic, but it also was a little genre bending in that it had some fantasy elements as well. Actually, a lot of fantasy elements. I think what was missing for me was the deep dive into the characters. There were so many characters to follow, and it was hard for me to connect with any of them. I couldn't really figure out what was going on some of the time, but overall the fantastical elements of it were interesting and unique, and I liked the world that Caitlin Breeze created. So yeah, it's a 3-star for me. After I finished The Fox Hunt, I dived right into another NetGalley arc called This Story Might Save Your Life by Tiffany Crum. First off, let me just say that I would 100% recommend that you listen to the audiobook of this novel. It follows a podcast, so it has those podcast elements that when you're listening to it on audiobook, you really get to benefit from. This story is advertised as a psychological thriller. I personally would not say it's a psychological thriller. While there were some suspense aspects, I would more categorize this as a contemporary fiction with some suspense and thriller aspects of it. And I would also say it has a touch of the romance in it as well, which I really loved personally. In my review on Goodreads, I wrote that it was kind of a mystery with yearning. So I really like that aspect of it. This story follows Benny and Joy, who are two podcasters with a podcast called This Story Might Save Your Life. Even the podcast premise itself was very interesting. They talk about near death experiences and how you could avoid them or escape them, which added kind of a funny comedic element to it. And I liked that I didn't know what to expect from this book. So, Joy and Benny have this podcast, and one day, Joy and her husband, Xander, disappear. It follows Benny trying to figure out what happened to them. So, we get a deeper look into Joy and Benny's experience on this podcast, as well as Xander, Joy's husband's kind of influence in the podcast. And we get to understand the dynamic between all these characters and what that means for the relationships that they have with each other. I gave this book 5 stars. I thought it was incredible. I thought it was funny and suspenseful, but also it's not something that's going to keep you on the edge of your seat in the mystery aspect, but the character dynamic, in my opinion, kept me on the edge of my seat. It was a satisfying read, and I wasn't expecting it. It made an impression on me, and I really enjoyed it, so I would recommend it. Okay, apologies that we are slowly losing light. This is an evening film session, so bear with me on that, but we got the ring light going. We're gonna keep on moving forward. Okay, we're getting a little comfier here. I need this wall. The next physical book I read in February is called Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. This novel, I really feel like I should do a deep dive video on this novel because of how impactful it was on my life. And this may be a 6-star for me, which has never actually happened. So it's a true 5-star, possibly even 6-star, top tier books I've read in my entire life. If you can't already tell from the title, it is a romance novel, and I am not the biggest romance reader. So it's a lot coming from me that I rated this 5 stars. There is an added element to this story that made it extra special for me, and that is it being a Christian romance novel. It's actually my first Christian romance novel, and I'm very excited to dive deeper into Francine Rivers' writing and other Christian romance novels as well. This book deals with some heavy, heavy topics, so just some trigger warnings for even the description of the book. So, Angel is thrown into this horrible, traumatic world at an early age, and later in life, when she is an active sex worker, she meets a man named Michael who asks her to marry him. God speaks to Michael and says that this is the wife that I have picked out for you. On both ends, there is so much confusion because of course, the stigma with sex work, and of course, in this time as well. Rightfully so, Angel has little trust and no faith, and Michael is a man who is godly and faith driven to what Angel sees as an extreme. This book evoked so many different emotions in me. While there was so much discomfort that came from this book, the story of faith and dedication to not only one another, but of course God, was so inspiring and thought provoking as a believer in Christ. I could go on and on about this book, so maybe I will do a deep dive. If you want to see that, put it in the comments below. I would recommend this to everybody, not just those who are believers, to anyone who has ever doubted themselves, doubted their purpose, doubted their self worth. It was just incredible. Now, surprisingly, I read another romance novel after reading Redeeming Love, although this one has a few more elements in it that make it different than just your everyday romance. Hey guys, sorry, editing this video right now. I have realized that I've advertised this as a romance. I do not believe this is a romance. I don't really know why I said that. There's some romantic aspects of it, but this book is not a romance. So if you're looking for a romance, this is not your book. And that is The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. This story, of course, follows June Farrow, who has recently lost her grandmother. After the loss of her grandmother, she begins to have these hallucinations that she can't explain, and she discovers a family curse. June has to navigate this new reality that she finds herself in, and again, without giving too much away, this book has so many different aspects to it. There's time travel, there's romance, there's a very intertwined and deep family dynamic, and there's also a mystery aspect to it as well. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I thought it was really great. The writing was beautiful, and I wasn't sure what to expect from this book, but I was very pleasantly surprised, and it got a 4 star, so that says enough on its own. The next audiobook I listened to, and yes, these were 3 audiobooks in a row, The Art of Frugal Hedonism by Adam Grubb and Annie Razor Rowland. This book is a kind of self-help type book detailing living frugally while still enjoying your life. I gave this book 3 stars. I enjoyed it. It had some aspects that were kind of self-explanatory, and maybe you didn't need an author to tell you to do these things to save money and enjoy your life. But it was a nice reminder of the idea that money shouldn't drive everything that you do. And there are so many things you can do and can enjoy, even if you're not spending hundreds, thousands of dollars. It was a refreshing nonfiction book that was a quick and easy read, and it was lighthearted and cute and funny. Nothing that completely changed my life, but it was a good reminder to sit in the moments that don't have monetary value. This next book was also on my March TBR. It's called Wormwood Abbey by Christina Bear. This book is described as a cozy gothic novel that follows Edith Worms, who moves to her family's estate in Yorkshire and uncovers some family mysteries while making a salamander friend and getting to know her cousins as well as their handsome neighbor. I did give this one 2 stars. It didn't impact me at all. I really found myself a little bit bored while reading this. It almost didn't even have the warmth that I need for a cozy book. It was really touching on those mysterious elements with very little explanation of why we were even looking into these elements of her family. But I liked the salamander friend. The characters were okay. I didn't particularly care about their motivations and interactions with each other. It is a series, so it's possible I give the second book a chance. Who knows? We shall see. Okay, on to the only physical book that I owned and read in this entire February and March wrap up, and that is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This one is so nostalgic for me. I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I grew up watching this movie, so I had a vision in my head of what it looked like already, but I wanted to see if anything was different in the novel and give it the grace it deserved by reading it. It was just the coziest, cutest story with also such deep and important themes, such as the power of positive thinking, the importance of establishing and maintaining childhood friendships, and what those friendships mean to the development of a young person. Mary is a slightly snobby and negative little girl, rightfully so, as her parents were not the best. She learns the art of gardening, and as she's growing this garden, you can see her growing herself, which was a very cool aspect to this book. It was a cozy spring fun read that reminded me of my childhood. How much I loved coming home from school and just running around in the backyard barefoot. That was my absolute heaven, and it was nice to have a little reminder of that. Another physical book that I picked up in March was We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kluwer. We Used to Live Here follows a couple, Eve and her partner Charlie, who moved to Oregon and decide to renovate this old house. Page 1, you learn that there is a family who claims that they used to live in the house, and Eve lets them into her house to have a look around. I don't know why she did it either, but she did. This book is the epitome of a psychological thriller. I don't want to say much about it because I went into it pretty blind, and I think you should too if you're interested. It just truly kept me on my toes the whole time. I stayed up past my bedtime to read this, which is saying a lot. This one was very satisfying and ended up being a 5-star. If you are someone who likes a thriller with a clear ending, a clear explanation, then this book is not for you. You might still have questions at the end of this book. I still had questions at the end of this book. Again, if you want something that is clean cut, going to wrap up perfectly and give you the explanation you want, then I wouldn't recommend it. But if you like twisty, reality bending stories, then this one's for you. I did have one DNF in the month of March, and that was My Best French Wedding by Amanda Sellett. My Best French Wedding follows two journalists, Hildy and Walter, who have this tense enemies with benefits kind of relationship. Now, again, I only got 30% of the way in, but I felt that this was enough for me to decide it wasn't something that I wanted to continue reading. For me, I didn't like the writing. I didn't like the plot. I didn't like the characters. I didn't really know where the story was going. The dynamic between Hildy and Walter was at first super steamy and intense from the get-go, but then just kind of dropped off, and they were going back and forth with each other, making snide comments for 50 pages. I didn't feel any connection between them. It seemed like there was some history between them. Of course, I didn't get that far. We were flashing back periodically, and even the flashbacks were 6 months, 10 months, 18 months maybe, but nothing changed between the current chronological timeline and the past timeline. It wasn't even flirty. It was just their dynamic was very odd, and I wasn't even sure what the purpose was for the flashbacks. So unfortunately, I did have to DNF it. It was also set in France during a wedding, and I just didn't feel any ambiance of that. Okay, the second to last audiobook I read in March was The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. Long time coming with this one. I read The Hobbit last year, around this time actually, and I really enjoyed The Hobbit. I thought it was a classic adventure story. So when I read The Fellowship of the Ring, there wasn't as much of that. It just seemed like they were walking around aimlessly. I don't know, maybe it was just too long, and to be fair, on audiobook, I did keep kind of zoning out, which impacted my ability to follow the story. So, partially my fault for that. It feels sacrilegious to rate The Fellowship of the Ring 3 stars, but I did rate it 3 stars. It was good. I liked the ending. We're setting up, this world, and Frodo's character is wholesome and fun to follow, and I want to see his growth. So, of course, I will continue and finish this series. I must. It's a classic. I think I just wanted more of that high epic fantasy from this, I guess, second book, but I didn't really get it. Or maybe if I did, I wasn't listening. Finally, the last audiobook I listened to was another NetGalley arc called Fatherland by Victoria Shore. This story is set in the 50s and begins with a family whose father walks out on them one day with little to no explanation. You're following, of course, his wife and his 3 kids and how his abandonment affected them. You get both the father's perspective, the wife's perspective, and the children's perspectives. I gave this book 3 stars. It was short, which I liked that it was short. I liked that it was to the point. There's a lot of prose, not much dialogue. You're really understanding these characters and seeing the minute details of their lives as they progress after this monumental, traumatic moment. I think there were just a few things missing. I didn't feel super emotionally connected. I wish we saw a little more of the dynamic with the father and the children and the wife before he left. I love stories of family resilience, particularly in a time such as the 50s where the stigma of divorce was so negative. So, this was one that would be one that I would recommend. That's a 3 star. Whew, that was a lot. So that is it for the books that I read in February and March. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got some new book recommendations that may be in your comfort zone or out of your comfort zone. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!